Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to MetaView, where positivity equals possibilities. Hope you've had a great summer. Looking forward to an exceptional year. We want to begin the year with a celebration of sorts. We always end our year with celebrations, and this year I want to really start out thinking specifically about some students. Now, I put this young lady up on the screen because everyone knows Jacayla. Unless you are brand new to Medavie Elementary School, I know you know who Jacayla is. Jacayla has been a memorable student. She's moved on to the middle school this year, but Jacayla's changes throughout her life, her short life so far, in her attitude, in her attendance, in her grades, in her willingness to give effort, in her respect for other people, has just been overwhelming. And all of you have been a part of that. So I just want us to talk just a moment about Jacayla, because I think it's important to recognize the impact and the effect that we have on students' lives every day. Almost every one of you have had Jacayla in some capacity, from preschool to 5th grade as a student, or in the cafeteria, or on the playground, or somewhere. And she's memorable enough that if you had her for any amount of time in bus duty or whatever, you remember Jacayla. But we saw a huge change come about with Jacayla in her final year here at Medaview in 5th grade. From about Christmas on, there was a big change, and I credit all of you to that. Each of you had a part of that, but we saw a brand new Jacayla bloom through in the second half of her 5th grade year. Her attendance improved. She had almost perfect attendance in the second half. Her grades improved, and for the first time in her school career, Jacayla passed her SOL tests and the things that she had been working so hard for. Her confidence was built, and she'll be going on to the middle school as a completely different student than the Jacayla that we knew for several years. So I think it's important that we celebrate that at this time. Jacayla is a great example of the type of moving target that we are chasing every day. We talked a lot about this last year. You know, we have known all this time that the target for success, how our success is measured as a school, continues to move. And that's okay, because it's part of accountability, and we're okay with that. The expectation goes up, and so do our expectations for ourselves, and we just keep moving and changing and growing in order to try and make that change happen. But the last change felt a little more like a moving target when we found out that we're now responsible for the decrease in chronic absenteeism in our schools. Now, we've always known and recognized, and research will support, the fact that if they're not here, we can't teach them. And if they're not here, they're not learning what they need to be successful. But in the past, we've just stated that and moved on. And now it becomes a responsibility for getting them here, and so that we can teach them. Bit of a moving target, because that's not always within our realm of expertise. But we're going to talk today about how we can contribute to that and really make sure that these students are here at school for us every day. Now, as you know, that's part of our new accreditation standards for success. We're not the only ones. It's that way across the county. But let's look at exactly what chronic absenteeism looks like here at Medaview. And we talked at the end of the year about this a little bit too. This graph shows the state of Virginia, Washington County overall, and then us at Medaview. And it's broken down by the categories that we look at the most when it comes to our other indicators of student success. And that is economically disadvantaged, our students with disabilities, our English language learners, and homeless. Now, at Medaview, we don't have a very diverse population. We could look at this by race, but to be perfectly honest, as you know, the majority of our population is a white population. We have less than 100 students at our school who fall under the Black or Hispanic or 2 or more races category. We have only 4 students who are English language learners, and only 4 who are homeless. So I want us to speak specifically today about that group of students who fall under the economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities. That's these two categories here. Now, if we look specifically at Meadowview, and we'll just go to last year because I think that's the thing that's freshest in our minds. But if you take a look at this, you can see that 16.4% of our population is still chronically absent. As you know, the indicator for accreditation is 15%, which makes us a level 2 this year, and we've got some work to do to come off that level 2. Now, of this 16.4%, 21.6% of those students are economically disadvantaged, and 28.6% of those students are students with disabilities. Now, I know that doesn't come as a surprise to you. Not only that, but what we also recognize about that is that it's the same students in all those groups. Take Jacayla, for example. Yes, she's been chronically absent throughout her school career, but she's also in that subgroup of economically disadvantaged, and she's a student with disabilities. So I want us to personalize this just for a moment. These aren't just numbers to us. We've got to put those faces on there. We've got to recognize exactly who we're talking about, and we've got to see if we can build those relationships with those students so that we can try to make a change for them. Now, again, we talked about this by race. This is overall in Washington County. These are our numbers. But we are going to be focused almost entirely on these top 3 groups, which is your all chronically absent students, white students, and black students. So we took a look at who our students were, and Dr. Markham, Mary, Lynn, and I spent some time going through their excuses for the last 3 years. And what we found is that overwhelmingly, the students who give an excuse for why they're absent when they're chronically absent is just that their stomach hurts. Now, we have a few more excuses. We've got, this is the overslept category, the darker blue. Sometimes the parents have appointments. That actually has gone down from the 2016 year till now, thankfully, because I do feel like we've really tried to stress to the parents that, the students are better off here than going with them to their appointments if at all possible. But overwhelmingly, headache and stomachache are the 2 areas that we are seeing the most number of excuses in. So let's talk about what we know about that. For 3 years, we have studied trauma, and we've talked about how trauma manifests itself in young students, because our students can't necessarily articulate how they're really feeling. They'll say, I have a tummy ache. Now, I recognize some of these are actual tummy aches, students who couldn't, maybe their stomach hurt, but their parents didn't want to take them to the doctor. I get that. But let's think about a chronically absent population. Almost all of those students have had some type of trauma in their life. What are we going to do about that? We know that, because we've studied this for 2 or 3 years, that there has to be a plan in place. We have to set a goal for what we're looking for. The Attendance Works website gives us this type of plan, and it talks about how we have to look at our school conditions. We have to look at the educators' conditions. How are we? What do we look like? And then what are our expected outcomes? So today we're going to spend some time talking about what that looks like, setting our goals for our chronically absent students. How are we going to decrease those numbers? What are we going to do to connect with those students? And then we're going to put a plan in place that looks similar to this so that we know exactly how to implement this to make that change that we need. So let's take some time right now, work with the people at your table to develop the plan for us here. So at this time, I'd give my staff time to work together, probably take an hour, hour and a half for us to truly implement this, come back together, look at the plan, develop it for the upcoming school year. So now we're going to take what you've developed and put it into this plan so that we have a very clear idea in our heads about what it's going to look like for us at Meadowview this year. Thank you for the time and attention you put into this today. I know that you now have a face that goes with chronic absenteeism. You now have a student who you know is struggling with something other than just going to school. We've got to get to the root of why they don't want to come to school, what's going on that keeps them from coming to school. And I think by doing this, by putting this plan together, we're going to be able to hit that target after all.